Hi, welcome to the Brookline Rotary Club, and George Chapman, our president, will introduce our speaker.
Well, proud class of 81, I believe, BHS.
That's right.
And hockey player, hockey coach. This man has more accreditations and involvements with committees ranging from hockey, actually, at the state and national level, to the development of screening and protocols for at-risk youth, at risk of criminal behavior, or even having been nabbed, and now what do we do with them? With TEDx, Coolidge Corner, which is one of the largest TEDx things. And this is enough out of me because we're really here to hear from him. So Michael, what would you like us to know first?
Well, it's good to talk to everybody again. I wish we could do it in person, but that'll be coming, I would think, within the next 60 days, hopefully. We're all adjusting to this new normal, which, there was something that was in the paper that just came out earlier while this meeting was going on from the Herald that about 7 to 8% of all people in Brookline are actually COVID or have had COVID, and they don't know it. That's based on the testing that we did with the DPH Friday at the Lars Anderson Park. I would warn that later in the day, Dr. Jett opened that up to anybody. So I'm not 100% certain that those figures are accurate, but that's what the Herald is actually reporting. I think 8% of the entire population of Brookline is positive or has had COVID. I would caution because I haven't seen the actual data, and I do know that after noontime it was opened up to anybody. So I'm not certain that all those people, which was 400 and something that were tested, are Brookline residents. I do know in the morning it was exclusively Brookline residents, as well as police, fire, EMS, and town employees. So that gives you an indication of how present COVID is. The town has taken tremendous steps to mitigate the risk. We've widened sidewalks. We have the mask bylaw currently, along with the state bylaw. The school department has worked tirelessly, and I mean that, to keep all the employees that are working safe. I'm sure everyone knows that when this first started, we were very new to this, the Brookline Fire Department Station 5 had a massive outbreak where they had a dozen firefighters test positive, and the entire fire house of 20x or so officers had exposure. So they had to shut that down. And when they did that, we're very lucky to have Andy Lipson, of course, Roger's son, a Rotary member for a very long time. And Andy's, and I've been in the business for 32 years. He's as good as they get, a remarkable young man. We had a lot of conversations, and we decided what we would do to mitigate the risks was we would go to a new way of doing business. Specifically, we would break the police department up since the schools were now closed. So we spread the police department up. So if anyone did get sick, like what happened at Station 5, only a small portion of the officers who were regularly exposed to the sick individual would have to go out, which of course we're still practicing today. The other thing that we did which changed was medicals, the way we respond to medicals. Medicals are the largest singular call that we get in Brookline. As you know, we have a massive elderly population of 7,300 plus people who live in Brookline, and we have multiple convalescent homes as well as nursing homes, and some high-end elderly homes too. And so what we did was we had officers, we changed the tiered response to responding to medicals. So officers are normally, the way the tiered response works is it comes into the dispatch center, usually through a 911 call. And since there are more police officers on the street than firefighters or ambulances, the police are dispatched, they get there first, and they begin the first aid medical response. Well, depending on the extent of the calls, for example, if someone felt sick and they had a fever, we changed the response. And so the only calls that officers are actually going into are ones where the person's in distress of possibly having a heart attack or cannot breathe, or there's actual CPR that needs to be done. Otherwise, it's a response where we respond, wait for the fire department, fire personnel go in, they assess the situation, and then the EMS personnel, Fallon ambulance comes and they decide whether to transport. And it's proved very effective. We're one of the few departments, and I want to knock on wood somewhere, in the state that has not had an officer test positive for COVID. The building department has worked with us too, and it's been, and one thing that I have to impress upon is a lot of folks who work for the town are not there. They're working remotely. The folks that are there are at obviously at much higher risk. The building department, along with the school department, has allowed us to utilize their folks as well as their equipment to keep things clean. So the constant turnover and contact, the police cars are cleaned 3 times a day. The officers clean them as well. And so we've been pretty lucky so far. We have had spikes, as I'm sure you've read, of folks at 2 specific addresses where there was a spike of COVID and on Kent Street and on Heath Street. And we did unfortunately see some folks that passed from it, predominantly elderly folks, but otherwise we've been pretty lucky. We did change policies too, obviously. It's a new way of doing business. As you see, officers wear masks now. Traffic stops are only public safety traffic stops, where before it was any traffic stop. Someone has a broken taillight. We don't do that anymore. And the risk of exposure is just too high. And if we get one officer that gets sick, because it's such a infectious disease, we could lose dozens of officers, and then we'd be at risk. The other thing we do is we have a department infectious control officer who's designated, and that's Lieutenant Russ O'Neill, who's also a United States major in the United States Army. And so he's a remarkable guy. He does tremendous work, along with 2 other veterans who are both medically trained, including one who's a paramedic. They have overseen the supplies that we get. And it's been okay. I will say that the officers are anxious, just like everybody else. And policing is a face-to-face, personal relationship type thing. And the decrease in interactions with the public has been, it's been trying, I would say. You want to work, you take the job to help people and make a difference. And when you can't interact with them, and a lot of the stuff you're doing is over the phone, there is some type of, I guess, work-related stress. To mitigate the stress, though, what we did was we have a department social worker who takes Zoom meetings from her office for the officers as well as anyone else in town. And we've slowly got the word out for that. We have a huge CIT population where we work with, and we're meeting with them remotely through Zoom. And so it's been quite a challenge, but I think we've done pretty well. Are there any specific issues or things that you folks? Susan's raising her hand.
Michael, let me ask you, what does CIT mean?
Critical incident training and critical incident team. So people who have mental health crises, we have in fact, our entire police department is trained as CIT response officers, and we have some that are even trained beyond that. And we work with people. If you'll notice, the suicide rate in Brookline, and again, it's not something anyone ever look up, isn't very high because we have so many emergency response capabilities between Brookline Police, Brookline Center, Mental Health Center, and then the Boston area BEST team, it's called, Emergency, Boston Emergency, I forget what the ST stands for. So
Suicide
with the
team?
hospitals being there, we've had a very, I think we've served the folks as well as we can serve, but I think the in-person relationships are really what a lot of us would like to return to, and hopefully we will soon.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, actually, I had two things. I was wondering about, I've always got questions. I was wondering about incidents of suicide and incidents of domestic violence since we've gone into shelter in place.
Domestic violence has increased. My wife threatens me all the time, but
Yeah, but
Sorry.
that's not our problem.
no, it has increased a lot. You know, you put people in the same household 24 hours a day. We have had a significant increase in domestic violence, and we've had an increase in domestic violence arrests. We've also had increases in theft. A lot of people, because now everybody has to wear masks, they will go into these different stores wearing masks, knowing that the video is not going to be able to indicate who they are. And we have seen a real uptick in that. Domestic violence has gone up all over the country where there is this shelter-in-place order. And so that's not uncommon. I think the reality of putting people in places for a very long period of time and under stressful conditions has not gone, what's the word I'm looking for? It has not, it's created a lot of problems for these families, especially families in crises. And so domestic violence has gone up, and we're doing the best we can with that. The challenge that we saw, but that we've overcome, it was because of the risk of infectious disease. We had, at first, there were limited places to take people who are seeking shelter, and we mitigated that through the state and the many, many shelters that work fearlessly, I might add, to help folks who are at risk. But that's the one area I think that we've had the greatest upticks is domestic violence and theft, of course, from stores.
And what about scams? I've gotten several suspicious, at least to me, queries, opportunities, whatever. And have you seen much of that?
Yes, a lot. It's very easy to sit behind a computer and send out bogus-looking emails, some very advanced. The FBI put out a warning early on about all the different scams, and the number of scams grow every single day. So yeah, that's been an issue. I think our population has done pretty well with that. A lot of folks haven't been scammed. It's too easy now to get onto the reputable sites, the the CDC sites and others, to really check to see if these offers are legitimate, and oftentimes they're not. So I think we've been okay with that. We haven't had a lot of folks that have been scammed out of a lot of money on false COVID phishing emails.
Other questions?
Richard, yeah.
I wanted to thank, I'm not sure who gets the credit, but you mentioned it, but I appreciate living in Coolidge Corner, the widening of the sidewalks, or the widening of the areas for pedestrians to walk, which makes it more possible to physical distance. So thank you for that. will that be continued for some time, or is there a plan to return to the previous walkways, or is there a plan? Is it just up in the air at this point in time?
So that actually came about through discussion through the select board, and it took a little bit of operational issues to make sure that everyone would be safe. But I would imagine that as long as there is the significant risk that we still have, and we're talking 8% of our population, there will be. We will eventually start to move towards normal when we get towards stage 3, which is a minimum of 6 weeks, maybe more away. And so then we'll go back to the stores all open, people parking all day and things like that. But I would say for at least the short term, and I know Heather's on the call, that it's going to continue. And it makes sense because, you know, I live in Newton, and when I walk, even when I'm wearing a mask and it's just me and my wife and we have the dog, we still, if we see someone coming on the sidewalk, we'll cross the other side of the street. And where we live, that's probably not the safest thing. So you're always walking back and forth across the street with a dog. And so it makes sense to widen the sidewalks. And it's a great public health move that the select board actually enacted.
Thank you.
Heather, you're muted.
Yeah, if I may jump in. I know I fought very hard for that to pass. It was actually quite controversial, and it was a 3-2 decision.
Oh.
So I would urge those who find it to be very helpful to contact your town meeting members and your select board members to echo that you think it was the right decision, because that's not always clear to everyone. I would like to see this continue as long as we can, but it will get hard as things reopen and people want to be able to park. I live on Longwood Avenue, and I see every day people in scrubs, you know, being able to walk freely to get to their place of work and where they live while maintaining social distance. So I know I would not like to give the parking back, and I will try to maintain it for as long as possible.
Thank you.
I mean, if you think of it from a public health standpoint, it actually makes a lot of sense. I would imagine, again, at the beginning, and I wasn't part of the conversations, there is the reticence to go so extreme. But the reality is look at how bad it has gotten. And so I think the entire country never thought it would get as bad as it has, and it has. And so to me, it makes sense. At some point, it won't anymore when traffic increases enough that folks walking in the street are at risk, higher risk than walking on the sidewalk near someone else who's wearing a mask. So that'll have to be something that we gauge. But to me, on a personal level, it makes sense. My wife and I walk in the street all the time when we're walking with the dog.
Howard?
Okay, Michael, I have a question. Is there a way to get the state to come back and repaint the lines on West Roxbury Parkway so that you have the travel lane and then the parking lane? And because I walk, when I'm out there, people coming the other way, I'm walking on the street, and every now and then you get turkeys that decide it's a 2-lane road. It's a 4-lane road, not a 2.
So Howard, I would say that you could certainly contact Todd and ask him to put that on the list. I will tell you that my guess is it's not going to happen anytime soon. The state is so overwhelmed with the demands and the budget shortfalls, which I'm sure you all know are coming, that this is way down the list. I live on a side street in Newton that's a dead end that is really, it's a mess. And the city was supposed to pave it this spring, and they told us maybe next year. Now at this point, it's not going to happen. there are too many other things. And remember too that we as a municipality have, as remarkable our services are, we've had to adjust and to a new way of doing business. So once we, the risk is lowered enough, we'll have to go back to that old way of doing business, but in a new method and a new approach to it. So my guess is I would certainly send something to Todd Corain, but I don't think you're going to have any success. If you do it, to me it would be remarkable. And it's not a criticism of anyone. It's just that the priorities right now are certainly not on line painting on streets. They're more of providing PPEs for people and making sure people don't die and get sick. And so that would be my guess.
Right.
Okay.
Gloria, would you like to ask a question?
I don't have, no, some of my questions have been answered, like the uptake of.
Thank you. And Joby, I wanted to give you a chance also.
No, might have been answered as well.
Thank you. Okay. Susan?
Susan, you're muted. You're muted.
Got it. Getting it. Okay. I don't know whether either you or Heather know about this, but I did hear that we are going forward June 4th with the farmers market. Do you know anything about how they're going to manage that?
Oh, I didn't hear about that yet. I think Heather would know about that before I would. I don't want to comment on it, but I can't imagine how we look at it. If there is a way for anyone to keep people safe, Brookline would be at the forefront of it, period. We have the brains, the resources, the relationships, the town government, it's certainly something, if it does, and that's only a week, that's really close. We would have to do an awful lot of planning. I don't know who authorized that. That would probably have to be DPH and the select board. But I would, if we're going to do that, I hope there's an awful lot of planning doing that. Just think about how many protocols are in place when you go to a supermarket. Now you're going to take them and throw them out the window and offer a farmer's market where there's no social distancing and masks and things like that. So it should be interesting, but if anyone could pull it off, I think we could, Brookline specifically. But we should be talking about it right now if we're going to.
It actually didn't come before the select board, but you have a lot more leeway when things are outside. So I'm sure the Department of Public Health is reviewing all of the plans. But yes, it is a little strange that it's only about a week away.
Gloria has a
This is
comment.
Gloria.
Go ahead.
This is Gloria. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me? That did come under discussion at the Department of Public Health, and there will be distancing of the people coming into the cellars. I'm not sure whether there will be some regulation of the numbers of people, some entry thing, but there will be masks and distancing required. And I have a feeling that there's some talk about having an entry protocol where only a certain number of people enter per unit of time, but I'm not sure about that part. But I know there's discussion about distancing and the cellars and regulations pertaining to that.
Thank you.
So just for everyone's information, I received information through the chief of police that the superintendent of schools and the commissioner of the public health have authorized a in-person graduation at Heath School. And so that was just, we just spoke about that this morning. So we're going to sit down and look at that. It's later in the month of June. And, it's been authorized, so we will plan accordingly. It'd be interesting to see, especially with 8% of our population that has had it or has the antibodies, the steps we have to take and how many people actually participate But again, if anyone can do it, it's the folks who work in this town government, because we've done. I cannot emphasize enough how well the fire chief, the police chief, a lot of people working at the EOC have just. It's been incredible, and remarkably, the 7% is something that I find it hard to believe that number, or 8%, I think it was, that I just read. But the number of people that we have lost is really small compared to a lot of other places. So, we're starting to get back to normal, and we're going to have to operate at a new level of cautiousness. But I think we'll be able to do it.
Go ahead.
One final question. Is there something that we can do to support our public officials, Michael?
Erase the part where I said something about Rhonda and threatening me all the time, if you could. But other than that, my wife, she's not going to think that was funny. But other than that, she's not going to think. No, the masks, Joyce, they were just. It was so thoughtful that you folks are thinking about us during this. The best thing I think you could do is stay healthy. Stay help out. I will say, and one thing I just want to say, and I know this is recorded, and there's going to be at least another 10 people who watch this. So the state has enacted this mask protocol, mask regulation, and there are a lot of loopholes in it, which there should be, because folks who have certain medical conditions are not required to wear masks. And we have had a few incidents where we've had our townspeople who have gone and confronted people about mask wearing, and people have been either insulted or even threatened. So if someone isn't wearing a mask, the law says they don't have to if they have certain medical conditions, and the law also says very clearly that the government cannot ask them. So understand, if people aren't wearing masks and they are social distancing, there may be a reason why they're not wearing it. So, that's the only thing I would say that I'd want to get out, that just because someone's not wearing a mask doesn't mean to every time that there is a reason or that they are ignoring the rules and regulations.
Thank you.
The one other thing I will say, I received a call from a Rotary member who we all know and love, who is planning on doing a remote pancake breakfast. And I am not mixing up the batter again like I had to with Mark, because I couldn't move after that. But I think that's a brilliant idea to prepare the packaging and then hand it off. We're talking already with the town. This will be coming before Heather soon. And probably do it in front of Brookline High. Have the people put their names in their front windshield, and they pull up. They've already paid. They get their pancake mix, and then they drive off and they enjoy it. Not with all of us again, but at home. And maybe Bo can be on the front lawn playing.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that we are discussing, and we're hopefully going to do it if we can get everything organized within the next month. So
great. So are we. What about the marathon?
As from what I have heard, although they have not made the decision yet, they are strongly leaning towards canceling it for September. And quite frankly, I would, unless something dramatically changes in the next 30 days, it makes no sense. But remember, the students are coming back. The Red Sox will probably be playing, although they'll probably be playing in front of an empty Fenway Park, or much less dense. So to me, it just doesn't make sense. I get the huge fundraising that it does, but how do you police 26 miles of course and try to get people to social distance if we're still in a critical stage of spread? That's my gut feeling. The BEA folks are the best there are. Tom Grilk is just one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. I'm sure he'll make the right decision along with the other folks. And but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. Are
Any-
there additional questions or comments or specifically for Michael or not, just for the good of the rest of us?
And Gloria, I turned on your microphone if you want to speak.
No, I'm okay.
Great, thank you.
Michael, are you familiar with the book, The Psychopath Whisperer?
No, I am not. I'm afraid.
No, you will quickly see that your wife does not fit the parameters. I will. It was an absolutely fascinating book.
George, you better edit that out too, or George is in trouble.
George, as long as I've lived and the amount of trouble I've either generated or been a part of, I'm not terribly worried. I will get. I'll either find my copy and drop it off, or order another one for you. It will be very informative and very useful in your work about at-risk youth.
Oh, okay. Not at home.
In-depth stuff. Anyway, you'll see all about it, and if you don't know it, I think you will enjoy and find it very informative in terms of the assessment of people and programs that will and will not, depending on the individuals involved, be successful.
I'll buy it myself, George. You don't have to get it. It's called The Psychopath Whisperer.
Right. It's by a PhD guy who started getting interested in the issue when he was a student intern working in a max security prison in, I think, Canada, actually. But then expanded it to Phil. You may know, or Richard, the precise term, functional MRI, something that takes repeated pictures and stuff, and studying the brains of people when subjected to different stimulus and so forth. Anyway, it's a deep but incredibly readable book, and interesting to people like me.
Phil has a comment. Phil?
Well, I can tell you that a huge percentage of prisoners on death row in prisons have severe brain damage.
Interesting. Well, George, do you?
Howard has his hand up.
Go.
All right, so I don't know if I said anything last week, but last month we were talking with friends in Scotland that we met originally in China. And he said in Scotland at that point, they're talking about 18 months of seniors being home and not being out into the public the way we used to be.
Oh, joy.
Wow, that's a long time. I have no idea. Personally, if you're high risk and elderly, I would minimize until we know we get the all clear. I like the idea of the wide sidewalks. Why not take extra precautions? It's not. I think one of the positives of this is that people have gotten off of the gerbil wheel and started to slow down, especially of course in our area in Boston, New York, that area, and started to spend more time with family, and so that's the only thing that I think has been great about this is, I don't want to say there's anything great, but to just slow down and rediscover family and loved ones and spend time with them.
Yeah.
Best thing for me. Both my daughters are home.
Since this is a public health question, I thought I'd give Gloria a chance to respond. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that, Gloria?
To the the whole mental health issue of incarcerated, a kind of positive, it's not jail, but it's a kind of incarceration. I think there are mental health issues that are bowed, and I think that Brookline Mental Health is trying to do some remote counseling, but there probably should be more of that kind of thing going on now, because the extension of people being many times in solitary and some without family members available or unable to be with them there is a stress associated with that after a long period. Short periods are much more manageable. So this long period of being unable to really get out and mingle and so on, the social issues are beginning to mount. And I think Brookline Mental Health is trying to address some of this by remote counseling. And I think there probably needs to be more of that kind of thing.
Right, and Friendship Works has been working on this the problem of elder people isolation for a long time, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, but Mutual Aid Brookline. Mutual Aid Brookline is also lining up volunteers to call people who are by themselves with only telephone access. Those of us with Zoom get a lot more social interaction, even if it's not physical. We certainly get to see each other and interact. But people who are home by themselves with just a telephone are very much getting it. This is getting to them.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. Phil, did you have another comment?
I have a question for the group. So Lucy and I are in Florida. We're trying to decide when it's time to come back to Brookline. We'd like to get back as soon as possible. And we haven't quite figured out how we would be driving back. And, like, where do we stop and go to the bathroom? I mentioned that before. Renting an RV seems kind of extreme. But once we get to Brookline, here in Florida, we don't go out except to take a walk in our area. We have food delivered. Can you do that in Coolidge Corner? Can you order online and have food delivered, or can you go in your car and do curbside pickup?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and from grocery stores as well as restaurants. Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Great. So, Michael, any other parting words that you want to leave with us?
Just stay healthy. It was wonderful to talk and see everybody. I hope we can meet in person soon. And I just hope everyone is well, and take care of yourselves. And thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Right
Great,
back at
great
you,
to see you. Great to see you.
Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So be
Sharon.
careful out there. Be safe.
Thank you.
Yes.
Take care.